Good afternoon. Welcome to the session on humanity. And my name is Minago Ikeda, an associate professor at Kyushu University. And I will be a moderator of this humanity session. As you know, the humanity is a fundamental and enormous issue. And it's very important, especially now in the changing era. But on the other hand, it is very difficult to discuss. And I will try to do my best to find the way for our ideal future. So we are now talking about Anthropocene or Technocene or that kind of things. And the new era is coming now. And Anthropocene is we should discuss about Anthropocene or not, or really the technology is the big issue now or not. We can discuss about that. And the background of this WDA is the question is, where is design going? And what can design do? And the second question is, what will be the role of design at that time? So, and another session is on planet, and another session is technology. And based on the changing in a planet and then technology, and we are the human, and at the end, we should think about ourselves, the human. So, and I'm very happy to have a wonderful panelist, and Mr. Dominique Chen. He is a professor of Waseda University, and he specializes in interdisciplinary informatics. And he is currently working on fundamental model, media, and at the same time co-founder of Dividual Inc. Yeah, and he is talking about more than human or something like that. And second speaker is Mr. Jun Rekimoto, and he is a professor at Interfaculty Initiative in Information Studies at University of Tokyo, and deputy director of Sony Computer Science Lab. And he specializes in human-computer interaction and an augmented reality and human AI integrations. Yep. And now we have the third the speaker, the Mr. Cameron Sinclair. And he is a designer and writer and a pioneer of a social responsive architecture. And he is a founder of the World Changing Institute, and focus on architectural solution for social and humanitarian crisis. And he will talking about the humanitarian architecture. So, and we will start the presentation. Mr. Chen.
Thank you, Ikeda-sensei, for your kind introduction. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Dominique Chen. So for today, this really complicated thematics of humanity. I would like to propose to talk about this concept of the more than human worlds. So I will be talking about the entanglement of humanity and the more than human worlds. I would explain a little bit later. And also the technological architecture, infrastructure, and all the artifacts that surrounds us. So when we think or contemplate the questions of how to grasp this idea of humanity, within the context of design, I tend to think of the idea of more than human. From a multi-species perspective, to understand this entanglement of us humans and non-human lives. And today, as we ponder the relationship between human intellectual capacity, which is distinct, and the pursuit of autonomy in the development of digital technologies, I find the concept of this more than human very valuable. So to give you a background of this concept, more than human is a term coined by cultural ecologist and philosopher David Abram in his 1996 work, The Spell of Consensus, referring to the worldview of non-human life forms. This phrase signifies that humanity exists inextricably with non-human multispecies, implying that the existence of humanity transcends the narrow definition of the human species. This recognition that humanity is, in a way, augmented by more than humans life forms by default, and challenges the anthropocentric notion that humans can control and dominate the natural world, has the potential to redefine our epistemology of who we are and who we want to be. So how can we design to perceive nature and culture as intertwined, or humans don't just control but care for nature culture? And what impact might such questions have on our technological designs? As a technology researcher myself, I explore the possibilities of technology design that do not rely just on human-centered approaches. And I'm inspired by the recent humanistic literature on more than human and multi-species worlds. There has been a growing interest in design research concerning the well-being of non-human life forms and the desirable relationship between humans and more than human worlds. I'm just giving you some examples. There's a multitude of really interesting work, so this is just a tiny bit sample of this really interesting field. And so in this expanding field, I and my interdisciplinary research team called Ferment Media Research, we specifically investigate communication with microorganisms inhabiting traditional fermented foods. So we focus on the traditional fermentation process of nukadoko in Japan, where microorganisms such as lactic acid bacteria and yeast reside in a substrate made from mixing rice bran with water and salt, creating these delicious and nutritious fermented foods. It's a kind of pickles. The traditional method of fermenting nukadoko, which has been practiced for centuries, involves humans manually stirring the rice bran, resulting in complex ecosystems through microbial interactions. Similar to other lacto-fermented foods, nukadoko-produced pickles are believed to have a positive impact on gut flora as probiotics, signifying that fermented foods represent an entanglement of more than human worlds with the human body. So in our team, we have designed a system called NukaBot, showing the video, to track the fermentation status of nukadoko in real time by sensing the condition of the microorganisms within it. And people can ask NukaBot questions vocally about the fermentation process, like whether the pickles are ripe or not. And besides, the NukaBot can request by itself the surrounding humans to steer the nukadoko when it senses the right timing. The purpose of this system, NukaBot, is not to realize automatic management of fermented foods by machines, but rather to enhance human awareness and sense of care for the invisible microorganisms. And this is why the NukaBot does not have robotic arms to steer the rice bran automatically. And we will never plan to implement that. We are also conducting experiments to analyze the microbial communities in nukadoko and how it gets entangled with the skin of human individuals who steer the nukadoko daily. And we do this research in collaboration with the Tokyo-based company Biota. And this microbiologic endeavor aims to better understand the entanglement between humans and microorganisms from a microbiological perspective. And so far, this is a preprint of a coming publication. And in this, we demonstrated that some of the lactic acid bacteria from nukadoko indeed adhere to the human skin of the people who interact with it daily. And this is a preliminary result, and one of our future goals is to explore how the transfer of human skin microbes to the nukadoko affects its composition and results in unique flavors based on the differences in the individual's bodies involved. So our design, NukaBot, serves as a mediator or interpreter between humans and microorganisms, relying on mechanical design. Another idea that emerged from this design process is whether we can make computer behavior ferment in a metaphorical way, like microorganisms. To think about this, the previous versions of NukaBot simply detected the condition of nukadoko using sensors and responded according to predetermined programs. Therefore, to ferment the system, we are trying to implement designs like embodiment, where the NukaBot's voice prosody changes based on the redox potential variation of the microorganisms within the nukadoko. So it's a really live system, so it changes minutes after minutes, hour after hour. Another fermentive behavior that we conceived is grounding, where the NukaBot can absorb the result of the communication with the surrounding human community. So it learns new words from conversations with humans and incorporates them into its response using GPT. As a result, people who spent a lot of time with this version of NukaBot felt a stronger sense of integration between the NukaBot and the microorganisms within it, and also developing a sense of life affection toward the machine and the microbes at the same time. We have also conducted design workshops using this metaphor of fermentation to encourage designers from various disciplines to reflect on their ideas in a fermentation process and discuss concepts of intention and responsibility in design from the perspective of fermentation. So rather than basing our thoughts on completing and perfecting a final product, we contemplate what it means to nurture a product and how design objects can continue to ferment or continue to fluctuate or change, just like pickles. In focusing on the relationship of mutual care between humans and more than human entities, we recognize the value of ongoing change, the interdependence of generation, and an appreciation for the process itself, echoing discussions on human well-being that I personally continued with my fellow communication scientist, Junji Watanabe. So this is my last slide for this presentation. So based on these design dimensions of fermentative well-being, we can think about how technology can integrate into our lives in a more desirable way. We can, for instance, compare two different approaches to designing our technology, one of control and one of ferment. This table is a derivative work of Francisco Varela's comparison of John von Neumann and Norbert Wiener's paradigms, actually. So originally, the NukaBot was designed to facilitate the detection of microorganisms in nukadoko, thereby enabling a better management by the humans. And in this context, the NukaBot's technology primarily serves as a companion and not a controller, since it does not replace human intervention in maintaining the nukadoko, which is the steering by the hands. However, when we look at recent digital technologies, we see that many inventions make us dependent on machines, raising questions about our ability to function without them. All the smartphones and the numerous addictive apps they contain truly beneficial for the well-being of the human individuals for entangled with the modern human worlds. The goal of NukaBot is to develop an increased sense of physical awareness towards nukadoko and its microorganisms over time, thus fostering a caring attitude towards microorganisms. People will nurture their own bodily senses toward the microbes over time, and it's possible that after a few years of cohabitation with the NukaBot, there may come a time when they can perhaps part ways with it. As a designer of the system, I don't mind that prospect. I welcome it for the sake of human and more than human autonomies. Or another possibility of the future is our ability to interpret sensory data and digital information may also evolve in parallel, creating new ways of perceiving the fermentative world. Nevertheless, striking the balance between human autonomy, the more than human autonomy, and machine autonomy will remain crucial. So this is it. Thank you for listening. I look forward to the discussion.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Jun Rekimoto from the University of Tokyo and Sony Computer Science Labs. So I am talking about the human AI integration, so where our ability can be integrated with AIs. So you are already familiar, very familiar with concept of AI, or maybe you can already use ChatGPT or robot. So maybe the two types of AI and human interactions. So one is a kind of robot or very autonomous. So some robot can automatically do something, like Astro Boy. I hope that you are familiar with Astro Boy. And the other side is kind of cyborg. So that you can maybe mechanically extend it, or maybe more information extended person. So your ability can be augmented by the AI. So you can make more integrated. So the AI and the IA can be integrated. That is human AI integration. So maybe the error is from the human-computer interaction, like how to deal with computers like a smartphone and myself, and there's a user interface. But there are two types of the robot AI human interactions. Something like is like Astro Boy type. So there is a robot and the humans, and you can command the robot. So please get something, and then robot can do for you. It's a human-robot interaction. But the other type is a human-AI integration. So it's more tightly or more invisibly integrate your ability can be augmented. So this is kind of interesting example. So I pick up this Twitter or X, the article. So I think this person's mother language is English. So it's something like this.
Hi, everyone. I am talking to you in my native language, which is American English, but I am going to be trying out a new AI tool that allows me to translate
English,
my voice
but
into...
this is automatically translated Japanese.
皆さん、こんにちは。私はアメリカ英語という母国語であなたと話しています。しかし、新しい AI ツールを示す予定です。このツールは私の声を言語に翻訳できます。
A little bit strange, but very quite understandable. And also using his own voice can be very nicely translated to his Japanese translation. So now I'm talking about using English, but it's not my own language. So my mother language is Nihongo, Japanese. So I think in the very few years, so everybody can speak your own language, even in an international conference, and maybe automatically or translated, simultaneously translating. So I think it's huge. I think the advance of the communication of the worldwide. So even though maybe I can speak Ukrainian.
Мудрі народи сильної країни.
Yes.
Завершився 17-й день війни.
So this
Мудрий народ.
Kind of very typical way of human AI integration. So your natural ability can be attached, AI can be attached, and you can extend. And the other project we are doing is the silent speech. So now this is the speech, but without using real voice, like so just lip motion. So this is important because you can use the sound or automatic speech recognition everywhere. But in the public space, you can talk to your smartphone and let me say my current schedule. It's not annoying. It's annoying. So you cannot preserve your personal private information in the public space. So maybe you can preserve privacy, but maybe only using your lip motion, and then your smartphone detect. So this is a perfect way to communicate without using hands-free communication. And even though the ChatGPT can listen to your utterance, so the ChatGPT maybe answer in your earphone. So maybe you can be a very clever person because you can ask the ChatGPT with a silent speech, and then AI can respond. So then you can behave as a very knowledgeable person. And the other important direction is that some person has a disability of speech, or somebody has to extract their vocal cord for the throat cancers or other dystonia or other symptoms, and they cannot speak, use their own vocal cord. But still, if they can use their lip motion, then AI can convert this motion to the real sound. So the AI technology can recover their own speech abilities. So now we are using the this is ultrasound, ultra echo device, and then you can attach here, and then this sensor can look at the like this image. It's the inside of your mouth, and then there's a real voice.
Alexa, play music.
So this is real voice, and this movie is actually internal of your mouth, and then the AI can recognize this motion, and without using the actual voice, and then AI can recover the original voice without using actual voice. So then now that we can just only using the lip motion, and then AI can recover the voice. So this is recovered version.
Alexa, what's the weather like?
So a little bit artificial, but now quite understandable. So we are developing this kind of technology, and in the near future, we don't have to use your own vocal cord, but maybe only the lip motion is enough for communication.
Alexa, play
so
music.
something like this. And then we also noticed that this is the AI can translate your lip motion to the real voice. But by using this technology, simultaneously, humans can also learn how to use this technology. So let's look at this first person, this one. Oh, sorry. Oh, so what I want to say is in the first session, he cannot speak well by using lip motion. But by using this system, maybe 30 minutes, and then he can find how to pronounce through this AI. So this is similar to how to learn your own voice when you are a baby. So when you're a baby, so probably you don't have to say well, so maybe papa or mama or something like that. Then you can accustom to your own voice, and then you can now gradually train your own organ to pronounce. So by using the AI and combination, we can also do the similar things. So maybe let me start. So this is, I want to say, the kind of cyber cortex. So that means that your own brain also augmented by the AI layer. And maybe that this AI layer can reprogram or download applications, softwares. But this is not the science fiction, because if you're familiar, the Neuralink is the startup company run by Elon Musk. So they are very actively developing the brain-machine interface device like this one. And actually, they are soliciting the volunteers, human volunteers, for this kind of experiment. And I really want to be on a waiting list. But there's one limitation that the volunteer must be a US citizen. So maybe if somebody already has a United States nationality, so you are eligible to apply this the experiment. But this is at this moment, this is not mainly for the people with kind of disabilities. So maybe they cannot move the hand, but they can think, and then robot can do that for person. But I think in the long run, so the human maybe have this computer will integrate it. So this is quite science fiction type of concept. And if you're familiar with the Matrix, or the first version, and a very famous scene that the Trinity is asked by Neo, can you fly that thing? That is helicopter.
Operator.
Tank, I need a pilot program for a B-212 helicopter. Hurry.
So then the Trinity download the ability of operating helicopter.
Let's go.
So this is quite similar to, I think this is quite similar to today's smartphone. So if today's smartphone, you can download almost anything, any ability in using applications. So maybe you ask that do you have ability to calculate something, and then can answer not yet, but I can download that ability. So this is quite science fiction type of imagination, but now it's quite realistic because this is inner earphones like AirPods or the other product, and you are already using noise cancelling. Okay, noise cancelling is actually the computation of the sound that eliminate the environmental noise and then distinguish noise. But it's very, very sophisticated computer program. So some product is only transmit human voice, but eliminate other environmental noise. So it's quite computation sophisticated. This is actually the software, computer software. And the software computer in this earphone is quite high performance. Maybe the 30 years before, this can be as compared to the supercomputer. So you can already put supercomputer in those days in your ears. And so maybe there is a possibility to change application, any application, like automatic translation, or just detect a very engine noise for some specific task. So that kind of application can be downloaded. So that is the AI can be downloaded to your abilities. So now is the era of the human AI integration. So from the design point of view, it's a lot of issues. So what kind of abilities can be used or augmented? Or what kind of ability should be automated? So you can put some kind of ability in your body, in your environment, but maybe you can ask just a Roomba for room cleaning. So you don't have to maybe an augmented cleaning person, but you can just use a Roomba. So the autonomous or automation and augmentation can be very, very the important issues for designing. And what kind of human AI synergy should be possible? And the more important, what should I learn? So if the completely simultaneous translation can be available, should I learn foreign language? I don't know the answer, but still it's a very important question. So the very famous science fiction writer Arthur Charles Clarke says that the old idea that man invented tools is misleading half-truth. It would be more accurate to say that tools invented man. So the AI, we invented AI, but the AI might be redesign humans. So thank you very much.
Okay, hello. So today I'm going to talk about humanity. What is humanity? So just to give some context, I may be coming from a very different part of the spectrum in terms of designers. Most recently, the last few years, I've been working on a couple of projects. I've been taking assault rifles and handguns and smelting them down and turning them into musical instruments in the US. I've been working on rural revitalization and reconstruction here in Japan, working on emergency housing after disasters, and building schools for Syrian and Palestinian refugees. And so my work has been more about humanitarian work. And what does that mean? So humanity, under international law, means to protect life and health. But once you get into the Latin word, humanitas, we define the definition human nature, and within that, and is very important, is our unique and innate ability to love, have compassion, and be creative. This is basically the rule of a designer, to love, have compassion, and be creative. So you are humanity. Now, if you look at the state of the planet, turn on any channel today, and you'll feel like we've lost our humanity and our ability to love the place we collectively inhabit. From man-made conflicts to our inability to rebuild after natural disasters, it feels like we're spending more time justifying destruction than investing in intangible solutions for construction. Our future depends on how compassionate we are to the environment and how creative we are successfully to adapt to the changes that are happening all around us. The world desperately needs thoughtful and impassioned builders. Now, currently, we seem to be committing to short-termism. We're coming up with problems and inventing technologies to solve those problems. And we're raising expectations and false hope into communities that are suffering from tragedy. And this short-termism undermines our ability to make lasting impact and differences to our humanity and us as a species. We have never really had the capacity to lead in a world where natural disasters are a daily occurrence, but this is the world that we will face. Now, for 16 years, I co-founded and led something called Architecture for Humanity, working in about 47 countries around the world, focused on post-conflict and post-disaster reconstruction. We were very global, we grew very rapidly, and I've been very blessed to work with reconstruction teams that responded to man-made and natural disasters, from housing refugees displaced by war to rebuilding villages affected by earthquakes and tsunamis. During that time, I worked with the Rule of 4 in responding to man-made and natural disasters. So, very simple guideline. In the first 4 days, the area needs immediate relief efforts. In the first 4 weeks, we need engineering, design, and building assessment teams to mobilize and to evaluate damaged structures and infrastructure. In the first 4 months, locally based design and architectural teams must work with community leaders, stakeholders, funders, and professional institutions to coordinate a reconstruction effort. And finally, and most importantly, teams have to commit to at least 4 years into the rebuilding process. Right here in Japan, in Tohoku, which I worked for 4 years, we saw many designers come and leave. And we have to be very important that when we're working in this area, we follow a simple framework that will commit us as designers in the long term. So our Japanese team followed that principle with a dedicated multidisciplinary team working alongside communities. We were able to start the rebuilding process. I kind of think of it as urban acupuncture, that if you can do one small thing in a very large situation, you can help elevate the opportunity for change. And not just designers as professionals, but we even had hundreds of thousands of young people even create millions of paper cranes as a way to inspire and to raise funding. Most of our funding for Japan came from people under 18 years old. So helping reinforce construction practices and building codes and ensuring that funding is distributed to affected communities, we realized that a decade later we need to evolve this methodology for our own humanity. These are just some of the projects we worked on. I'll go very quickly. I should note that in every affected community, the first thing that somebody wants is food and familiarity. So build a beer garden, build a sushi station, like allow small business to restart and have a sense of normalcy back again. Or rethink ideas. We worked with fishermen to actually create a hammock company when they were out of work and they could no longer fish. And give kids a place to play. We used the recycled telephone poles that had come down and the netting from the fishermen to create soccer facilities for the kids. And then starting small businesses. These are our clients. And you can see lots of projects that are really community-led projects that help do simple designs to get communities back underway. However, we need a fifth rule, and that is to ensure that we rebuild to support healthier, more interconnected ecosystems. In a disaster, people become very selfish. They're thinking about just the humans. But when you work with communities, the number one thing that communities affected care about is not themselves, it's the environment. Never again will we destroy our environment, and we will protect it. And it's a moment that we can actually use environmental design as a mechanism to restore and grow ecosystems. We're going to see this happening more frequent and more stronger. And these cataclysmic events only take a few minutes to tear apart, but a community, but generations to recover from. So our world is changing, and we need to create and support our fragile ecosystem, because it's our species that has caused the damage to a once thriving planet. So I just want to go back for a second and just mention, it's not like the world doesn't want to create better solutions, but we're simply not training our designers to. If you go to any design school across the world, any architecture school and any industrial design school, they're not talking about planetary saving, they're talking about interplanetary leaving. And so we need to actually work with our institutions and our representatives and our leaders and academia to begin to train a new army, in a way, cadre of humanitarian designers and architects. And we need to go beyond manifestos. We actually have to work on action. Another white paper on how to create a more equitable living in the Middle East is not what we need. We need design solutions implemented. So to do this, we need to work cross-disciplinary, providing design services, building for communities in need. We're talking at the very basics of humanity is what we as designers can do. Listening and learning with these communities and focusing on social and economic change while preserving cultural heritage. And I'll go back to that point momentarily and why it's important. And also job creation. We're talking about the realities of AI-human interactions and the fear of job loss. But most of the job loss that are happening are more likely to be Silicon Valley and not the jobs that we could create in order to sustain that ecosystem that we need to do to survive as a species. And then, of course, as a designer, it's your responsibility to transfer that ownership to local leadership. It's not really about creating a jewel in the city, but a city of jewels. So this year I launched World Changing Institute, a research and development institution focused on design solutions to humanitarian crisis. Our organization basically empowers designers and architects to circumvent the kind of partisan quagmire that emboldens the status quo and figure out mechanisms where we can respond to the most in need. Coupled with that, a few years ago I wrote a series of books called Design Like You Give a Damn. We're actually launching a site that actually is the world's largest database of humanitarian design projects and solutions, which went live this month. But I'm just going to end with one project that we're about to work on. For the last few years, we've been focusing our attention on areas at the front line of climate change. The atolls and islands of the Pacific only have a few decades left to figure out their future. And recently, we've been working alongside a partnership of local organizations to support communities and a series of participatory design activities. Now, the reason that the design challenge we're about to launch is called Now Here is this island nation has 20 years to figure out if they're going to be nowhere. So the future of the Kwajalein Atoll is very bleak. We learned earlier today about how the world has warmed. But for the Kwajalein Atoll and the Marshallese living on the Republic of the Marshall Islands, the temperature has actually gone up much further and much more, and the shift of where the storms are coming mean that a nation-ending crisis could happen any time, not just in 30 years, but tonight is the most dangerous night this month for citizens of this island. Does anyone know why? Full moon, exactly. Because of the full moon, the gravitational pull of the full moon, it can actually create a king tide that will devastate the infrastructure with seawater. So full moons used to be something that you wouldn't worry about. For some of these island nations, it is their primary concern. So believe it or not, in 2020, we did not even have imaging of this island properly. So, you know, when we're talking about what is the future of our technologies, there are places on the planet that are not even given the attention to know what's happening on that nation. We just asked Google to just take a photograph. Just one ask. Could you just take a photograph so at least we can begin to map and understand what's happening on these islands and atolls? And then survey the island, and then begin to understand demographics, to have language-based localization. I want the app that can do the translation because my Marshallese is terrible. And to understand what the unsustainable decline of a society looks like, how drinking water is becoming scarcer, how jobs are becoming scarcer, how people are becoming sick and injured and have no way of getting off the island. And I should note, this island in particular, 80 years ago, is where this nation and my nation fought. Like, our respective nations lost our blood on this island. And right now, this island has to figure out if they're going to even last till when we get to the 100th anniversary of that war. So with a small team, we created a sustainability lab on that island. If you look at, if you talk to anybody in the military, they have something called a forward operating base, which you set up a base in the most politically fragile area so that you can respond to need. Environmentalists need forward operating base. We need to respond where we're needed most, not in at universities, but on the field in the communities. And so we have this local team, and we've launched the lab where we're actually creating some of the innovative ideas that's discussed here today and showcased yesterday, and taking them to the island and figuring out what can be the sustainable future for this island, because it will be the first nation that has to decide if they're leaving. They have 30 years to decide if they devolve the nation, or if they figure out how to move, or to come up with a strategy. In a way, rather than calling them refugees, we're calling them climate navigators. So how do we create a future for our climate navigators? And the design lab, as you can see, is Marshallese led, and again, the participatory process in figuring out a climate future. So we're launching a design competition to figure out the last housing for this island. This will be the last design, and the idea of the house is that it needs to transition off the island with the families. And this will launch at COP28. So, you know, this is just one of a number of islands that our organization is working on, and we're figuring out how to work in other austere environments. But this is just a small effort in a monumental task, and we really need to start now. And whether it's through my institute or any other group, it's hope that the world's designers can actually come together collectively so that we can amplify what I call the best of humanity, to love more, to be more compassionate, and to be more creative for not just our species, but all of our species. And, you know, in 1999, I was a very young designer, and I begged for kind of evolution in our design profession. And, you know, with the world currently where it stands, there's no time to beg anymore. We kind of need a revolution in academia, a revolution in our profession, and a revolution of what it means to be a designer. So thank you so much, and I look forward to some questions.
Thank you very much for your interesting presentation. And before having a break, but I would like to ask some question to clarify your the focus. And about the Mr. Chen. It was really interesting to know the relationship between the human and the microorgans, and also the technology as a media. And the human has changed after or during making that kind of project, or
Yeah, thank you for that question. So we have conducted a few experiments with the system NukaBot. So the first experiment was quite short. So we did like a 10 days experiment with about 6 people. So we brought the NukaBot to the house, and we asked them to live with it for 10 days and see what happens in their perception toward the microbes and toward also the machines. And just within 10 days, people started to, talk more deliberately, meaning that in the initial period, people were just asking questions like, prefixed questions. So you can ask, functional questions like, so how's the fermentation today, and how's the temperature, blah, 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 blah. But then after like 5 or 6 days, people started to, talk, to make small talks. So without goals, So they started to ask the machine like, what kind of music do you like? Like, is there any place you wanna go? Stuff like that. So we found that really interesting, also from the anthropological perspective brought by the famous Malinowski, who talked about the fatigue communion aspect of the communication. So we don't communicate just to transmit information or like, just to make orders or something. But we also communicate just for the communication's sake and to, nurture the bond. So we found this aspect of the technology really interesting. So we developed a GPT-based function where you can ask the Nuka about anything. So you can give it any keyword, and it would kind of answer in a way. You can ask about computers, and it will answer you that computers is actually fermenting microbes, blah blah blah. So really nonsensical, but in a way you can just enjoy the communication as a process.
Yeah, the communication must be quite interesting and have a fun, I think. And my question is, the people communicate with the organs, or the people communicate with the computer? Yeah, and yeah.
Right. So I think I showed you a kind of diagram where you can see a human person, the microbes, and the system, which is our design. And so we, in a second experiment we just recently conducted, so we exhibited the Nukabot in 2 public spaces in Tokyo, one in Miraikan, which is a public science museum, and the other one is Hakko Departamento, which is a restaurant shop specialized in fermented foods. So we placed 2 identical Nukabots for like 6 months, and we kind of observed how people communicate, interact with it. And we, through some interviews, we tried to probe what these people are interacting with. Is the machine or the microbes? And so when we started to make the system follow the microbial temporality, meaning, its voice change, its voice speed change when the microbes are more active or less active. And once we make the machine follow the natural organisms, people started to see the robot and the microbes as one integrated being. So that's one design dimension that we discovered, and that was quite interesting even for us. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And I would like to ask Rekimoto-san, and the technology can expand the capability of humans here, and solve the problems which humans have. Yeah, and my question is how far the technology can help the expand the human ability, and can or should or I think it's the human has humanity has the ability, and we try to overcome the problem and so by ourselves, but the technology can help everything. Then what we can do, what we should do? Yeah, that's a question.
So it's highly dependent on what kind of ability you need, or what kind of satisfaction if the technology can augment you. So for example, so there is technology player piano. So piano automatically plays very well music. But you also want to play by your own finger to learn something. So this satisfaction is quite different from the automation. So even though technology can automatically do everything, but you still want to do something by yourself. And then by doing it by yourself, the process can also be augmented by technology. So I think it's quite important issue is that what kind of satisfaction you need, or what kind of, in the Japanese, yutakasa, it's a richness or something. So the satisfaction you need is very important. And now the design can choose either the automation or maybe the augmentation. So I think it's very, very important design issues. So if the technology can allow you to choose automation, augmentation, so that the design, very important design issues to why you need augmentation, why you need augmentation.
Yeah, it's of course, it's an important design issue, I think, and it depends on what we want to do. Yeah, we can choose which technology we would like to use and not use, right?
Yes, and also there is clear value is that there are a lot of people with some kind of disabilities or handicap, and now the technology has this feel that this gap, or maybe the language barrier is very a huge barrier, especially for the Japanese, the mother language is not English, so we have a very huge effort to learn English. But maybe the AI technology can help this process. So the language communication barrier can be eliminated. We'll be using this kind of AI technologies.
Thank you very much. And I would like to ask Cameron, Mr. Sinclair, and I was very impressed that your project is so important. And I was shocked that the island, the people, Atoll, should decided to move to the other place. And and then in this sense, the architect or the designer, what architect or designer can do, because the people decided to move, or the designer or architect can help to move, or the advice to move, or what did you do?
I should be very clear, the people don't want to move. They have been there for 6,000 years. Because of climate, they have to move. They will have no opportunity. But we often are very reactive as designers. We wait for crisis in order to respond. But there's a moment to help transition an island nation to a better future. Their alternative is very bleak. The island itself is an independent state of the United States. And the idea from the States is that everyone should move to Kansas. What is a Pacific Islander who's been there for generations going to do in Kansas? And so we as designers need to think, this is an amazing opportunity, because it's not just about housing, healthcare, education, cultural support, respecting and repairing the art and the language of a people, but it's also to give them a sustainable offboarding. And the reason that I think this project is very important is it's the first of what will be many parts of the planet. And I think, humans tend to make poor decisions in crisis. We make very bad design decisions. And guess who doesn't get invited when there's a crisis? Architects or designers. And so, here's an opportunity to be ahead of the curve. I do think that, I think Tim Engel was talking earlier about often we see technology as the future, and humans have to figure out how to integrate with the next step in technology. But the planet doesn't need us, and so the planet. We are custodians. We're very fortunate custodians of the planet, and we have to figure out, as much as I love new technologies in AI, and I'm not sure what I want my pickles to tell me, but I definitely would love the idea of fermenting as a design process. But if we can't figure out our most basic needs, we end up doing very bad things. And when you look at the last 5 human conflicts, wars, it's been because of lack of access to resources. And so as designers, we ethically have failed the planet, because, we have to remember that as designers, there's someone out there who designed instruments of destruction, that are used in those conflicts. And so we have to have a kind of, I feel like the WDO and other associations need to have a Hippocratic oath, a code of ethics for designers, especially in the planet that we are going to leave for the rest of the species.
Thank you very much. And I hope that I could clarify at some point. But in the audience, do you have some questions to the panelists for clarifying the point? Please.
Thank you. Sumaya Sleiman from Saudi Arabia. I have a question for you, Cameron. I've been a fan of your work. I've followed what you did for years. Wondering about the financial model of sustaining such work. And also, since you mentioned that architects and designers aren't invited, how do they get involved? How can they be integrated into the system in a way that is sustainable?
So the financing is like, I could do a 2-hour lecture on how to finance humanitarian designers, and it's something I'm going to be publishing a lot about because I think it's important. I should also note that I also have a gin company, and that helps finance some of my more crazier projects. But the reality is working with foundations and private family foundations and design organizations, and most people don't know that for the first 5 years of my career, I funded myself by giving talks like this. And ironically, our first project won a design prize from the Index Award, and what people didn't know is that we hadn't built the project yet, but the money that we won from the Index Award was exactly the amount we needed to build the project. So, you know, what's funny is we often reward the idea more than we do the implementation, and so we have to figure out how do we create mechanisms to fund that. I will also say, and I'm not going to go too much into detail, but there are institutions that are traditionally in the field of destruction that realize that the environment is a security threat. Your own country, for instance, you know, what's going to happen to areas of very high temperature and in desert communities is areas are going to begin to become inhumane to live in, which will cause mass migration, and that's going to cause political instability. So actually some political leaders, not from the arts or the design, but from defense and from infrastructure, see design as a mechanism for security of their own nation. So you just have to reframe the funding and it'll come. It's a design challenge.
Yes, this is an important aspect. And any other questions? No? Okay. Okay, please.
When can we get the nanobot? When can we get your machine?
So to be frankly speaking, it costs about $3,000 to make one, including the fee for the artisan who makes the pottery, which is the body. So we also use a traditional technique for that. The price of the sensors are getting lower, but because of the pandemic and the many wars we were having, the price is going up again. So I don't see in any near future it will be available at the mass distributable price. So $3,000, but I think it should be marketed around like, you know, way more affordable price, like at least like 200 or like 300.
But I do see for research the idea, and it's crazy. I know I'm thinking of like Avatar, but the ability to actually communicate with a biomimicry in a way that is like first person, rather than, you know, we think how nature evolves, but if we could begin to communicate with nature and understand how it evolved, that might actually help the human species.
Thank you.
So I'm thinking more than pickles.
Thank you. Can I respond to that? Yeah, just shortly. So that's an interesting pointing out, I think, because so I didn't mention today because I didn't have time to develop, but we use this idea of animism, which is also a traditional Japanese culture, and also Eastern Asian culture. So it derives from Chinese tradition, and which came to Japan after it went to Korea, etc., etc. So there's a view of those kind of monsters or like supernatural entities who are like really bridges between the human civilization and the non-civilization worlds. So they are like this kind of liminary existence that exists, at the really borders of humanity and modern humans, who are often, depicted as these kind of monsters, or like even objects can turn into yokai monsters. So this idea exists like for thousands of years, and I think it's quite interesting to think of technology being inspired by old, traditional thinking like that, and which will kind of allow us to, kind of avoid the technocentrism, and or like just to think within technology can lead us to really poor, results. But how to multiply or like diversify our ideas in thinking? Yeah, just the addition. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Is that now clear? Okay, and then we will have a 20 minutes break, and we will meet the 3:40 here again. And we would like to talk about the humanity in the second session. So now we would like to start the second session, and now I hope that we can discuss about the humanity and have a constructive discussion. And if possible, we would like to reach some kind of agreement, or if not, maybe we don't have to reach the agreement. But at any time, at the end, we would like to present something, right? Okay, then based on your presentations, I would like to ask to each, what is humanity? What do you understand the word humanity? Cameron?
I'm probably going to sound like a broken record, but as I mentioned, the idea that humans has our innate ability to both love and be compassionate and be creative. And, this is probably the most misquoted phrase about Charles Darwin. My mum runs the Charles Darwin Society in Shrewsbury, so I know way too much about Charles Darwin. But he was often quoted about how humans have always figured out how to design their way out of a crisis, and we have this kind of unique ability to creatively come up with solutions to thrive as a species. He never said that. There was a reporter that basically said he said that. But I think the point being was that, other than opposable thumbs, we do have this like unique ability to come up with incredibly unique solutions to the most difficult problems, and that is what makes humanity beautiful. What makes humanity depressing and sad is when we come up with short-term solutions for personal gain. And so I think when we talk about humanity, we can't just think about positive humanity. We also have to think about, in the industrial age, how negative humanity has challenged us.
Thank you very much. And it reminds me that in the morning, the Patty Moore, Dr. Patty Moore, her presentation was very impressed, and the audience are very moved. And this is kind of humanity, I think. Yeah. Okay, then Rekimoto-san.
So I think the world is quite rapidly changing. and the technology is changing, and maybe the society will be changing. So the AI era can be compared with the industrial revolution. So I think the civilization might be very, very different from now for the future. But I still think the humans cannot be changed fundamentally. So what kind of the aspect we can feel happiness or satisfaction? It should not be changed so much. Or maybe the AI system can create a very nice, delicious food, but the subject that tastes food is humans. So I think that what will be changed, and what will not change. So the evolution and maybe eternal aspect of human is quite important. So I think it's quite important to look at what will be changed, but what won't be changed. So that is humanity, from my point of view.
Thank you very much. So the humanity cannot not change. Yeah, the humanity is what we have inside for a long time from the past and the future. It cannot be changed, right? Okay.
Yes. I was really touched by Cameron's wording. We need more humanitarian education for architects, and I think that the exactly same needs is for information engineering or like mechanical engineering. So what it is to be a humanitarian machine learning data scientist, for instance, so that kind of imagination is really needed. And so even the word humanity contains many nuances and many aspects within it. And one thing I wanted to remind here today is one of the origin of the word human. So it has many kind of etymological roots, but one famous one is humus, which means the soil or the ground, right? So human in Old Latin meant we are the existence of soil. So we were born from the soil and we will return to the soil. So in a way, human, the word human, kind of points out to this kind of radical connection we have with the earth or the natural environment. And also there's another derived word from the same roots, humus, is humility, which is not, which also contains positive and negative connotation today. So you can be humiliated in a very bad way. So, someone can negate your idea or your effort. So that's a really bad humiliation, right? But to be humiliated in a positive way is to be humble. And I think this kind of sincere humility has been lacking, at least in my field of computer engineering or interaction design, and many people who work in my field also responding how to work seriously as technological researcher at the same time of being humble and how to embrace this idea of humility instead of negating the current state of humanity and also negating all the aspects of technology. Yeah. So it's a question for me.
Thank you very much. So, okay, then the next question is, what is the difference between the humanity and the human, and the technology can affect the humanity or not?
So I think because I'm working at the front line, my perspective on the technologies that are needed are very simple, but also very advanced in terms of access to clean water, food, etc. I think there is a role, not just technology as kind of the industrial technology, but when you talk about data, I always think that data are stories with the tears wiped away. Sometimes it's the truth, but it's emotionally disconnected. But I think to be human and to have humanity through the eyes of a data scientist in a way is putting empirical data to understand what is behind the emotion. And so I think there's a very strong value in understanding UI, UX, and its value to humanity in explaining truths, because we all have our own individual truths. And I think you'll begin to find, as data science becomes much more prolific globally, that people's view of data will change based on their viewpoint of what life and society is. If we had this conversation in South Africa, if we had this conversation in Argentina, it would be very different of how we define humanity because of the situation each of those countries find themselves in, both economically and socially. So I personally believe that the more we push the boundaries of design, the higher that we pierce the skies with architecture, the more deeper we have to do to respond to human need. I will be the biggest champion for technologies in the future and for AI and new ways of living if we don't just forget about the old ways of living. We have to do both.
And it's a little bit about the empathy. We have to have that empathy to the people in the difficult situation, and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, I think like one of the projects I'm working on is the assault rifles, turning assault rifles into musical instruments. What's interesting about that is it's a unique problem of the United States. We have 405 million weapons in the hands of US citizens and 50 million weapons in the hands of US police and an army. And there's more guns than people right now. But the issue isn't just creating a psychological issue of fear. It's that the mental health issue around young students is one that is overwhelming. And when you talk about who is feeling bad, sometimes it's not the poorest nation or the one with the most environmental issues. The fact that my daughter knows how to defend herself from a mass shooter, but she doesn't understand algebra is a problem to me, and that she is being trained to protect her life, but she's not being trained to enjoy her life. And so that also is a crisis.
Can I just add to that? So when I often talk to this kind of conference, I always show my work, and people know that I work with AI and some robotics and stuff like that. So people mostly think, okay, so you are a promoter of the technology, you are a promoter of AI. But no, I am really much entangled, and I am confused in this, entanglement of myself and my passion for technology. But at the same time, I know that in the past 20 years, the IT industry has done such bad job to affect on people's mental health, as you mentioned. So I have been reading many papers about psychological effect of social network systems, or the surveillance system, and of course the surveillance capitalism systems that we are all incorporating in our lives without knowing in it, right? So as technologists, I cannot just accept it as it is now and just go on. So I am, I don't mind confessing that I'm confused today, and I don't want to, act like I know the answer or anything like that. So I'm trying to struggle through this really confusing situation. But I think it's important to acknowledge this difficulty in trying to find, common path in finding solution. And but at the same time, what Cameron does have been doing for Architecture of Humanity, the interesting point I think is that even it's a universal framework, anyone can join your project. But all the projects are situated in really concrete locality. So one project in Sendai or Miyagi in Japan is one instance that has been entangled with the history and context of that place. It cannot be imported to Paris, for instance, right? So I think we need that kind of instantiation of technology, like how to design an iPhone in, I don't know, Kyushu or Sendai or any place, and we must have something different. So why I'm saying that? Because I think it's time for us to acknowledge this universal common points, common threads of humanity, but at the same time we really need to find how to connect those differences of values and local ideas and traditions at the same time. So that's another difficulty we have, but we have to embrace both, universal ideas, but at the same time vernacular values, right?
So talking about locality, so the first presentation, maybe I'm a kind of very high-tech oriented person, but I also directing the research laboratory in Kyoto. So Sony established a very small research laboratory in Kyoto, and the main purpose is how to connect the very traditional Japanese culture and also the technology. And we established the work in collaboration with the Japanese the Urasenke tea school. It's very famous Urasenke tea school, and created Chashitsu tea room, and it's very very authentic the tea room, and also almost all the sensors are embedded behind the scene. So this looks a normal, very authentic Japanese traditional the tea room, but we also capture the entire human motion for the how to capture its motion of the teacher, which is called otemae, to the translate to the student of the school. So I think that kind of combination of locality or traditional culture and also the high tech can be coexist. That is, I think, what we want. So also Dominique said that maybe the iPhone in Kyoto, iPhone is Osaka, iPhone is Sendai should be very interesting, because we can connect worldwide by using Zoom or Metaverse. So they always connect on the cyberspace, but at the same time, we are living in a physical world. The value of physical is quite important, so the locality is quite important. So I think the fundamental value of local is different. So this place is different from other place. This place has one value, and the other place has other value. So now I'm here in the Roppongi. I think that this is very, very big city, huge city. But now I'm going back to the Kyoto, so I can feel the kind of atmosphere of Kyoto. But still, I think walking through the Kyoto, very famous or traditional temple, but at the same time using a cell phone to connect to the Zoom conference to the maybe other place. So this kind of heterogeneous connection of locality and maybe metaverse kind of a cyberspace is, I think, one of the very important opportunity of how to balance between humanity and technology.
I once worked on a project that was, to me, was really crazy. It was reindeer herders on the Taiga Mountains on the Mongolian-Russian borders. And because of international conservation rules, the reindeer herders couldn't continue their craft the way they traditionally lived and worked, and they were beginning to die out because of conservation rules that the country had brought in. So in a meeting with the Association of Reindeer Herders, yes, there's a picture of me sitting on a reindeer, we began to use technology to create social enterprises and social businesses for the reindeer herders. One of them was a short-term rental where you go into the mountains and you stay in a tent and you work with the reindeer herders for the day and have reindeer milk and everything. And for somebody traveling, it equates to about $100 US to stay with them for 2 days. but for the reindeer herders, that was enough income for them for the month. So they only needed to do this for 1 day a month or 1 day every couple of months. And so they only do this, you know, to have this interaction but they, I said to them, you know, you need to have a phone to operate a phone, like a smartphone. I kept saying, like, we need to get you a smartphone. And then I talked to the herder, and he showed me his phone, and it was a smartphone, but he didn't call it a smartphone. He just called it a phone, because this was the first phone he ever had. So it's funny, sometimes when we think about technologies, we're saying, I have this new thing for you. But, you know, often communities who you think are much more disconnected from technology are way more advanced and are way more integrated into new technologies than you can possibly understand. So how do we design services for communities around the world that instead of it being a smartphone, how do we make smarter phones? You know, how do we make phones that are designed for the very people? You know, I worked in Yoshino for many years. How do we make a smartphone for the lumber industry in Yoshino? And what are the products they use compared to someone in Sendai or somebody, you know, on the Marshall Islands?
Right,
So.
right. That's a really interesting point because I wanted to talk a little bit about, you know, all this vocabulary of like smart something, smartphones, smart cities, smart applications, smart home systems, right? And just recently I have been thinking, and you know, again, I don't have any strong conclusion, but I'm trying to think the use of these kind of words in our technological discourses, like, you know, smart, and also, you know, Rekimoto-san used augmentation, and which is a really interesting topic because, you know, again, I feel like really ambivalent emotion when I hear augmentation every time. Because I like to be augmented by technology. I cannot live without Google Maps, for instance. I'm a very bad, you know, I'm a very bad self-navigator in the big city like this. But at the same time, I have trouble as a technologist to design smart phones or like augmentation technology, because it's, you know, as if, again, it goes back with the idea of humility. It's as if like I can, as a designer, make people smarter or like, you know, make people augmented, right? So where is the autonomy? And I think that's also Rekimoto sensei has spoke about this, you know, unique process of learning something. Even if you're a, you know, bad pianist, you know, you don't care. You just enjoy, you know, your own process of learning, right? And I think that's the aspect that's been totally being missed in the, you know, major industrial information industry. So, you know, the machine voice translation, where we see a British or American person suddenly speaking Japanese, I'm against that, actually, because I don't think it's augmentation at all. And I just reminded me of a recent article by Douglas Hofstadter, the author of Gödel, Escher, Bach. You know, he's a physicist, right? Really famous physicist. And he wrote like a 4-page articles on how he's against machine translation, because he has been learning Chinese for like 30 years. And like a few years ago, he did a conference in mainland China in Chinese. And he thought his Chinese was still bad, but he felt this fundamental joy of being able to, you know, even speak to the Chinese crowd in his Chinese, bad Chinese. And that was not about the quality or like perfection of Chinese, but his achievement, personal achievement. And why I'm bringing this up, because I think that has some echo with what we have talked about locality. So each person is a locality, right? So you can't judge, you know, for instance, a person's achievement. You can't judge it like from an objective perspective. That's her achievement, that's his achievement, right? So I think those like ambivalence is also in Rekimoto sensei, so I wanted to mention that.
Language learning is very good example. So for the maybe efficiency, so that I don't have speak many different languages. So I cannot speak Ukrainian, I can speak Chinese. So it's a huge effort to learn individual language. But still, I think maybe select one language to learn, maybe English is quite satisfaction, because I think learning something is kind of basically the respect to the other culture. So knowing other culture is quite good for me. So maybe I try to learn Chinese. This I think motivation is I maybe have a respect to the Chinese culture. So if the automation or augmentation or maybe the self learning is not I think not always coexist or maybe ambivalent concept, but still there's an option to select. One time we can choose maybe I can speak maybe Russian, so I can use voice change or translation. But in other situation, I can learn by my own ability to learn as a foreign culture. So the selection or option can be possible.
So, for instance, like for professional conference, you can use that automatic machine translation for quality, but for your personal private life, you can enjoy learning slowly.
Actually, writing English papers, academic paper in English, for Japanese, it's a huge effort to write academic paper in different language. But now the machine translation quality is quite good. So the student in Japan start using the machine translation as well as their own ability to write English. So I think the quality of writing papers for the young student is becoming quite good by cleverly using the AI technologies. So I think this is a good direction. So even though the very scientific genius, but they cannot speak English, they cannot learn English, write English. So they separate the language abilities and maybe mathematical abilities can be separated. But now they're using the AI technology, so this ability can be integrated.
I think it is important to be able to choose. It depends on the context, I think. And the purpose of writing an academic paper is not, the purpose is not learning the language, but the presenting your result or something like that. So it is important to...
Still, maybe 200 years before, we have to write in Latin. So computers are artificial language. So the situation is quite changing. So I think the technology can help, right? Maybe common language is, I think, good situation, good direction.
So, if you have very useful or efficient technology, you can get the technology, and you sometimes forget learning or knowing and making an effort or something like that. And what do you think about this kind of ambivalence?
Yeah, so going back to this kind of what is humanity question, I think what we are talking right here about, what should we learn, Rekimoto sensei asked in his presentation. I think that's a really fundamental, critical questions. So what can we still learn where technology can do for you, right? So that's one defining question of who we are as a humanity. So basically, I think this idea of humans, embracing this idea of humility is also embracing the idea of weakness, but not in a negative context. So if you don't have some kind of openness or weakness, you don't change, right? So how you can continuously change over time, which also can mean to accept others' ideas, which might be conflicting at the first sight. But you have to change, and we have to change at the same time, and we have to make time for those changes, right? We can't just install an application and say, okay, we're going to install the same application together at the same time, and we're going to find a solution. But sometimes it's the time that you spend together that creates mutual respect and care, right? So that aspect, I think, it's really fundamental, and which can be positively or negatively affected by our use of technology.
I was going to say it's maybe a bit controversial to discuss it at a design conference, but it's interesting. An earlier speaker talked about how Microsoft and a lot of the companies investing in AI are putting together kind of ethics in AI and kind of a mandate for people that are working in the industry to be very transparent and aware of the dangers, but we don't do that in design. There was a time when I used to think that technology is what's going to end the planet. You're a little kid, you see all these movies about how the robots will take over. But I think that unfortunately humans are too bad to do that. We're probably going to end it ourselves before the robots and the technologies get a chance to catch up with our own deficiencies. And so I think as designers, I strongly believe that we need to have a code of ethics as a profession. Doctors and lawyers, I'm talking from a US perspective, they kind of joke about this, but doctors and lawyers in the States say that they charge so much money because they have a Hippocratic oath to do pro bono work for the people in need. But designers don't know how to get paid enough. But maybe we could have a Hippocratic oath to explain the value of design, that we have an ethical mandate to respond to some of the critical needs of humanity. And I think, I almost see the AI industry being far more advanced in accountability for its professionals than we have in our own profession. So, it's funny, it's easy to pick on the AI, it's the newest thing to pick on, right? You look at Facebook and you say, it's controlling my life, but you put it up there, you inputted your life up there. I do think as designers, we're at a very dangerous phase in society where we have the ability, as Buckminster Fuller said, we have the ability we have the technology to solve any problem in the world. It's whether we put our mindset towards that's the issue. And I think even since when he talked about that, we have not actually done that. So I think, we do have to come up with some mechanism, a global mechanism of understanding between designers and I will just admit this, architects are really bad at admitting that they're part of the design umbrella. We like to pretend that we're above the design umbrella, but design incorporates all aspects. Architect, UI, UX, we are all part of the umbrella of design, and under that construct should be a code of ethics that we follow as professionals, or we shouldn't call ourselves professionals.
I completely agree of the importance of making those code of ethics, and to any kind of making effort in our world, like for food ethics, we have like computer ethics, we have architecture ethics, etc. But I think that the next challenge for those code of ethics is really to understand the long-term effect of what we make to ourselves, right? So just like, Arthur C. Clarke, cited by Rekimoto sensei. So it's the tools that design us, which also reminds me of Marshall McLuhan's famous, aphorism. It's the media is the message, and we are affected by the media. So long-term effects, so we have already discussed learning. How can you observe learning of a person? It can take 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Maybe something that is completely, meaningless things now, if you see within like a scope of like one day, can be meaningful if you repeat it, 1 year, 10 years. So we don't have enough resolution to that kind of temporality. So how can we think, in a long-term ethics? Because mostly all of the, current ethical values that we discuss is basically at the longest 1 year. I don't know, within the scope of like few months or 1 year. But if you want to really think seriously about the future of kids, so what is the effect of, asking smart speakers all the answers of the homeworks. I know it's a kind of stereotype, right? For like 5 years, you know. And maybe we will find some positivity in that. Who knows? But we need to evaluate that time period. And if we don't start it now, you know, we will never know how our technology will shape humanity 100 years after or 200 years after. So that's one thing I really think we need to hurry up. Yeah.
Do you have any ideas, Rekimoto-san, about that?
So I think the future is unknown, basically. So that it's important to recognize the future is unknown, and also what kind of technology should be changed the world is still unknown. So the one example is at the time of the Industrial Revolution, there is a steam engine, but the main application of steam engine is the pump of the coal mine. So just moving the water is the main application. But at that time, nobody think about the locomotion of the steam locomotion. So then 30 years later, the Stephenson invented the locomotion. Also, so then the industrial can be changed. So initially, the steam engine is not for the locomotion as a purpose. So I think the current status of the ChatGPT is kind of a steam engine at the coal mine or water pump level. And then I think the next generation, maybe young guy, will invent the steam locomotion level of AI, maybe within maybe 10 or 20 years. And it's very, very unknown at that time. So the one important thing is there should be an open opportunity to invent new things. So the technology should not be dominated by only maybe close company, but the open for everybody. So that's very important. And also we will enjoy change of the future. So this is my message. So future is unknown. So let's enjoy this unknownness.
Okay, then let's think about the past. Okay, this is the current technology is a different thing that we had in the past. I mean, you said that the current technology AI or AGI is comparable to the industrial revolution or not. That we have now the totally new thing or different thing or maybe very useful thing or at the same time very dangerous things. Yeah, what do you think? Is a different thing or in the,
yes,
yeah.
The magnitude change will be, I think, comparable to the Industrial Revolution. So we will see very huge amount of change from now, maybe 20 or 30 years. So for that at the time of the Industrial Revolution, so the city is created because of technology. So not just the technology, but the entire industrial structure or the social structure will be changed. So maybe from 30 years, so I think there will be a very big change, but still unknown. But I think so.
You are actually like the most optimistic on the stage. You are actually a true optimist. You know, I'm being pessimistic for a moment. Usually I am the most optimistic, but you have the crown today. But you know, when we look at that analogy of AI being like the steam, the industrial revolution and the steam train, you know, from the winner's seat, it seems like it's a good thing. But the Industrial Revolution caused colonialism and lots of other things that were very bad. You know, I'm sure, you know, I originally am from the UK and, you know, the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution, and as much as we moved on from the spinning jenny, we also used that technology for very bad things. And so, like, you know, to be optimistic, I am very optimistic with technology, but you know, whoever controls the technology, whoever has the opportunity to invent the technology. So is it our responsibility as designers to try and put the technology into as many hands as possible? Because when we say like, a child is going to grow up with AI as part of their life. What we really mean is a child that's born into industrial nation that have parents that have the money to be able to afford the devices which will give them the opportunity for that. So equity and equality within technology is something that we should address moving forward, or we should just be honest about the fact that there will be winners and losers in the future, and we just hope that the winners can be benevolent in their use, because in the past, history has taught us that the winners were not benevolent.
Yeah, thank you very much. And about the global warming and on our island, the people on the island should leave their home island. But in the past, 10,000 years ago or something, and many people should had to leave their home country because of the lack of food or because of the climate change. What's the difference? What is the difference between the time before and now? Yeah.
Funny, the root of this issue is that we actually have all the technologies we need in order for that not to happen. We will have mass migrational issues. This is just an example of what will be. When I started working with refugees, there are about 20 million refugees in the world. And I really was idealistic and said, I set a goal of helping at least 2 million refugees. It's my personal goal. Very bold of me at 19 years old. And that would be 10% of all the refugees in the world. Well, unfortunately, right now, we're up to over 100 million refugees. And by the time we get to 2030, it could be 200 to 300 million refugees. So we will have mass migration on a scale that we've never seen before. But we also have the technologies to figure out how to transition and integrate people. And rather than burdening them with the idea of being refugees, is to reframe the opportunity to give them the tools to migrate properly, not to migrate in despair, but to migrate with opportunity and to migrate in a way, the easiest solution is to take down all national borders and not fight. But we have no designers as presidents or prime ministers right now. So that's a future challenge for the design industry, run for office. But I do think that if we don't tackle this issue in the next 10, 15 years, we're going to be left making poor decisions again. And we have a really great opportunity as designers to figure out the flow of transition and to see people as nomads and navigators rather than a burden to society.
Yeah. Do you have some ideas, Dominique, about this kind of thing?
I only work with some pickles who represents the environmental microbiome of my house, of my neighborhoods. But I'm not saying this scale and the scale Cameron is working has no relationship. It's the opposite. I think it's related. It's in the continuum of the same idea of like how to empathetically engage within non-human beings and environments, because it's easy for humans to learn about the environmental crisis or like all the other crises through books or like through information as data. That's one thing, of course. I'm not saying that's pointless, but at the same time, so there's how do I say, ethic researcher that I respect much. Her name is Maria Puig de Ribera Casa, who wrote a beautiful book called Matters of Care, and in which she talks about, she wrote about this idea of non-normative sense of ethics. Non-normative, which means, normative means, a norm you learn, or like you're kind of forced to abide by the rule, etc. But she talks about this relationship between people who practice permaculture and the soil, or like agriculture and their plants, and or people who work with their cows, or any kind of pets or any kind of non-human living forms. They develop this sense of care, which becomes a non-normative feeling. So I think that's the sense we need to have, even if we use technology or not, because otherwise we will still, sit in a very comfortable chair and, look to the world as an observer. But we are not observer, right? As Cameron says, we are in a critical situation. We are not just observers. We're like people affected by that disaster. So I'm trying to, by using technology, I'm trying to invite people to, to make this kind of, to nurture this kind of relationship with microbes, for instance, through fermented foods. And maybe one day they won't need the technology I'm designing, and I don't care about that. I'm not trying to, be rich by making my my system. I'm interested in like how technology can assist in an ethical way people's, learning, or like becoming, affectionated by non-human beings.
Yeah, and it is interesting to hear that we cannot be an observer. We should think everything by ourselves and for ourselves. And if we think, when we hear about ethics, okay, we know the environmental destruction. We know about that. We know the people in the global south, and they have to live in the enormous pressure or something. But sometimes we forget. We sit on the comfortable chair and talk about a little bit. It is lack of reality, I think. How we can feel, and it's about empathy, how we can feel that kind of situation with reality, I mean, real ethics. We know the ethics, but it is sometimes difficult to do something concretely.
I think as a design anthropologist, you have to live and understand learned experiences. Working in refugee camps on the Syrian border, I lived in the refugee camps. Working after the tsunami in Sri Lanka, I lived with the villagers. On the Marshall Islands, I'm going to be living on the Marshall Islands with the communities, and I will never understand and fully grasp the depth of a community's way of looking at life. But I think it's vitally important that if you're fortunate enough to be able to travel and work in unique environments, that you have to live those environments too. For me, I actually really love doing it, and I learn a lot more from working with and building with the communities than I ever learned in the universities that I attended. And so I do think that as much as technology disconnects us, and Zoom certainly disconnected us globally on a short-term basis, I do think it's vital that we connect in person as humans and have a shared understanding and a shared learning to be able to design with and for communities.
Any ideas?
For opportunists, as an opportunist, and so we are not just observer, but we can create to improve the world. So especially I am a software the research engineer. So I strongly believe that the kind of the potential of open software, so that everybody can create their tools. That I think that can improve the world a little bit. But so it's not dominated by any one huge company. And especially by using AI, so I'm opportunist too. Everybody can write your own program by supporting by AI. So if you want to improve your house, or if you want to improve your NukaBot, so everybody can improve your own NukaBot program, robot. So that's, I think, it's interesting situation because there are a lot of problems in the world. But before than that, so to solve the problem requires money. So, but now kind of DIY kind of solution is becoming very possible by help by the AIs. So I don't say that the AI can dominate everything, but you can create your own solution helped by the AI. So that is my opportunist point of view.
So it's it's an opportunistic future, as everyone can create by themselves. Everyone can know the situation, and everyone can do something for that. Then everyone feel that is my issue, or like this. Yeah, and
actually, the understanding the real problem is most important. So even though we were just looking at from the Roppongi Hills and looking at there is a problem, not really understanding, but problem finding should be very connected to their actual life.
Yeah.
So this the person, if the person can have a ability to write their own solution, I think this is very strong.
Then we should go the site, and then we should look at with our own eye, and it's a kind of reality. It's so we were talking about the community, and the community is a certain scale. We can feel real. We can look at by ourselves. It's a very important size or thing like this. Yeah. And maybe we have 5 minutes. So the last question: what can we do as a designer or for our collective future? I mean, everyone has their own value, sense of value, and everyone has their the thoughts. But we would like to make a kind of collective future, because when we think about the global warming or the kind of things, we should have the big picture and a collective future. So what we can do for our collective ideal future.
Well, you hit the nail on the head, the word collective. I think, we are siloed very much. And, there are a lot of innovative ideas that are happening internationally, and we're not really sharing those solutions as globally as we should. And so, it's great that, the mandate of the WDA is really to make a better world, and there is an opportunity for the organization itself to be that mandate for designers, not just from within, but also externally. Designers and architects shouldn't be attending protests. I mean that's a controversial thing. Don't waste your energy. Design solutions, you have this incredible talent that nobody else has, this ability to this intersection of understanding people, problems, and being positive and creating a solution. Creating solutions is the best mandate. And as an advocacy of design, we have to go beyond the halls of design. We have to go into the halls of power. We actually, every government should have a minister of design, right? Because we sit there and we look at design problems, designing a way to disrupt a system it doesn't solve the system. And I think if we can figure out mechanisms where designers can be more integrated within the social structure, and that means politically, I think it's super interesting that the work that I've been fortunate enough to do, invariably, in order to make a decision, I end up sitting with the mayor, the governor, whoever the local leader. And the number one thing they always say is, I wanted to be an architect. I wanted to be a designer, but I was no good at maths or physics. So, little do they know you don't need to know anything about maths or physics to be an architect or a designer anymore. But we have a profession that people desire to do, this integration of problem solving and art. Like, we are a desirable profession. And so, we can actually act as a translator of a community's need. And so I think in order to solve current challenges, we have to realize that we're more than just problem solvers, but we are the bridge for solution making. And so, I would love to see designers stepping up, not just strengthening our role within the world, but actually being more integrated into the social infrastructure, which are making these decisions that often, exacerbate climate change and social injustice, et cetera, et cetera. So.
And what we can do for the next 300 years? In 10 years.
Me personally, I need to eat better if I'm going to be.
Personally, of course.
I think on a short-term level, as I mentioned, having design permeated in more aspects of decision-making. But I think in the next 300 years, we do have to figure out how to symbiotically live with technology. We can't be like anti-technology. And again, like, people say I'm anti-technology and pro-people, right? But there is no anti-pro. It's all integrated. And so I think, as I mentioned earlier, AI has figured out a way to be very open and transparent about the dangers. It's been very new. It's a new industry with taking on new responsibilities. I think we as designers need to do the same thing. And if we're going to survive as a profession, I think we need to figure out how we are leaders of the next evolution of humanity, not just solving the problems for the current version of humanity. So that's for 300 years.
Okay, thank you very much. And Jun Rekimoto-san, in 10 years and 300 years.
So the short answer is unknown. So, but I think each individual desires might be different, but some kind of coherence of the happiness. So we can find a common value of the humans. So what makes you happy is, I think, quite little bit it's common, and maybe there are taste or different of the direction or desire, but this is a huge the consensus of humanity can be exist. That's my, again, a very opportunistic view. And also for the future, one must say that there is a kind of utopia, ultimate goal of human society, and we are gradually going to this. But I don't agree with that vision, because we cannot direct it by one ultimate position. But we are very open-ended society, so it's very difficult to expect what kind of evolution path will be go. But again, that we can enjoy this the journey. That's my question answer.
Thank you.
Yeah, very hard question to answer. I don't know, but I can think of what's been problematic in my work, in my activities is well, we use the word filter bubble a lot. So that was a term coined by Eli Palisser in 2011. Filter bubble means, you're kind of entrapped inside these kind of informatic bubbles because of the behavior of social networks, who kind of predict your interest and attention, etc., which is a fascinating concept to think about. But at the same time, I think we're all born with some kind of filter bubble. I mean, there's a physical bubble we all live in, and it cannot be always, manipulated or controlled or solved, because, we are born to this world out of luck. I was born in Japan, some people born in Europe, we didn't choose. So to look at the negative aspect of the bubbles, both physically and informationally speaking, we need to resolve this kind of, born discrepancies that we all live in, but not at the same time trying to, how do you say, we should not ignore those differences. Again, going back to the idea of locality is and personal values. So I would tell myself, because I don't want to profess, and I don't think I can tell other designers do this or do that, don't do that. But I want to, from 10 years from now on, I want to be always questioning what I'm doing, and not to say I'm this, my profession is this, but to keep on learning from other fields and collaborate with other fields, the people I don't know, and to be unstable and trying to be comfortable by being unstable. Otherwise, I will be a very boring person. That's what I'm feeling to my own future, and I don't know about other people, but I can only think of my own future for now. But I echo with your use of the word collective. So how to collectively think about this, locality, personality, individuality. Yes.
Thank you very much. Now we don't have much time, but I would like to ask Mr. Ingold to give us some comments.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, and thank you for an exceptionally interesting discussion, which has left my head full of thoughts. I wanted to start with Chen-san's bacteria. The human body, we know, largely consists of bacteria of all sorts. And when humans live closely to one another, they share their bacteria. So sharing bacteria, merely by holding a child by the hand, sharing bacteria is an important part of the creation of kinship. And when Chen-san spoke about making as a kind, he said, why don't we think of making as nurturing a design? And that nurturing a design is like nurturing people. I began to think that actually what he's saying, and perhaps what you're all saying, is that design is fundamentally about how to make kinship with the world. It is a practice of forming kin, rather than a practice, perhaps, of creating artifacts as such. And in that way, you can see the relationship between kinship and sustainability, because sustainability is really about keeping life going. And that's what kinship is about. It's about nurturing new people so that they can come into the world, so that they in turn can nurture new people, and not just new people, but also all the other creatures that inhabit the earth. And that entails precisely the sense of empathetic engagement, which you stressed, and the sense of care that goes with that. And I think it also involves speech, which was very central to Rekimoto-san's address, and really fascinating. And the question it left in my head, and I'm sure in many of your heads, is what's the difference between having a machine that can translate your language into any other language of the world and being able to speak a lot of different languages? What is actually involved in learning a language? And I think we recognize that learning a language is more than simply being able to do the equivalent of what an AI machine is doing. Learning a language involves acquiring a certain kind of sensibility. It's also almost a way of perceiving the world that is very much tied to place, to landscape, to the country around. And that cannot be replaced, I think, with my view, that cannot be replaced by a machine. And also when we speak, speaking itself is not just coming out with messages, with words. We breathe as we speak. Speaking involves the whole entire body. And in breathing, we mingle with the air, with other beings, just as we mingle with them in our bacteria, which shows that we can't think with speech as with bacteria. We can't think of humans as isolated individuals. They're always overflowing with one another. And then I was thinking in relation to all of these talks about what we actually mean by technology and what technology does to people. I mean, riding a bicycle changes people. If you were to line up a row of people and say, can you tell which of them can ride a bicycle and which you cannot, you'd not be able to see. But you'd put a bicycle in front and you'd find that some people can ride straight away and other people can't. So the simple business of learning to ride a bike as a child actually changes you. Learning to play a musical instrument. The musical instruments came up with Cameron turning guns into, a beautiful idea, turning guns into instruments, that there's nothing, I think, new about the way in which people are changed through their engagement with stuff of various kinds. That's happened throughout history and is still happening today. But I think there's perhaps a mistake to think of somehow this AI thing as unlike anything that has happened to humans before. It's just another thing that people are playing around with and will probably change us. And it's just that as soon as we classify it as technology, it seems as though we hook what is happening to a narrative of progress. And whether that progress narrative is something that can be kept going is another matter. I'm not sure that it really can. The issue that did come up is how to balance a sense of locality, a sense of place, with high tech. Do we say that everybody's different because of the localities they're in, but everybody's the same because there's universal technology? Or do we say, rather, that difference is actually created through the very process of togetherness? It's by joining in a conversation, by becoming part of that one conversation in which all of life is involved, that we actually produce locality, make ourselves different. Again, an issue to think about. And in the case that Cameron was talking about, of what we do about rising sea levels, I read an article recently about the island of Fiji, where also suffering from rising sea levels. And the problem was, what do you do for communities that are located by the coast? And it turned out that the most difficult problem of all, you could build a community, you could rebuild a community higher up, that's all right, but the really difficult problem is what to do with the graves of the ancestors. Do you leave them there, in which case they get washed out to the sea, or do you dig them up and move them? Both alternatives being quite traumatic. And why was this important? Because for the islanders, the ancestors were not the past. The ancestors held the promise of the future. Because people follow their ancestors. Their ancestors were the people who went first, and they're following in their footsteps. If you take away the ancestors, you take away the future. And I think there's something very important here about the way we think about past and future, that the future is not something that puts the past behind us. In many ways, the past is itself the future. And by burying the dead, we make it possible for future generations to arise. This goes back to this disputed with Giambattista Vico in his New Science, who speculated that the word human might have its origin in humus. Etymologists debate it, but it's a really interesting thought that humans are people who bury their dead. And then just lastly, because I know people are impatient, we get back to this business of how we define humanity. My sense is that humans are creatures that collectively, continually and collectively create themselves in the crucible of their common life. There is no one essential human nature. We are collectively creating ourselves all the time and have done all through history, through a mixture of love, compassion, creativity, as Cameron said. But I would just like to end with this plea from Hannah Arendt, writing in the aftermath of the Second World War, about 1954. She said that, she talked about amor mundi, love for the world. And she said that our primary responsibility is to introduce new people, that is children, into a world that we love. And only if we love the world enough to introduce new people into it and teach them its ways, only then is there hope for those people to come. And I think if there's one thing that we should hold on to, it is that, as against the common refrain that we would say to our children, I'm sorry guys, this world is crap, this world is messed up, but we're designers and we've got a new plan. We've got a plan for a new society and we're going to educate you into it. That, said Arendt, was propaganda. And that is not the prime purpose of education or design, which is really to love the world that we have and make the most of it, say why it is so beautiful and why it's worth caring for to the people who follow so that they can do it in their turn. But thank you very much, a wonderful session.
Thank you very much for your comment, and thank you very much for your presentation. And maybe we can reach a certain agreement for the next future 300 years and 10 years. Okay. Thank you very much.